Good morning, fellow Papua New Guineans, and generally anyone who's watching me on Facebook. Today, I would like to bring up to you a very important topic in biblical prophecy called timeline. Biblical timeline. To my understanding, after research for 20 plus years, I have established that time exists on planet Earth when God first said, "Let there be light." Because light travels at 300 million meters per second. And because of light, it enabled everything to be seen. And time began when light began, when Jesus said, "Let there be light." There were two places in the Bible where God said, "Let there be light." First was in Genesis chapter 1 and verse 3. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. This is generally demonstrating Jesus Christ as the light of the world, because everything would have been be created in and through him, being the light of the world. So that is the enlightenment aspect of the light. The true light that we see, the physical light that we see in our natural world, began on the fourth day of creation when God said, "Let there be lights," and there were many lights. The starlights, the sunlights, and the reflective bodies like the moons of the planets. Now, for man to realize time was during the time of the sixth day of creation, when God created man in his own image and gave him what is the very important part of our body system, the eye. The eye enables us to see lights, and lights, as we see lights, then time began for us. People say, you were born, the moment you're born, that's when you begin to see light, that's when time began for you. So, generally, what is the biblical timeline? To me, God has already established the universe about 14 billion years ago through measurable universe. Scientists were established through what they call a microwave radiation, the establishment of the origin of the physical planet. When God said, "Let there be light," and maybe that's a time the Big Bang started, and light started about 14 billion years ago. As time moves on, coming towards the very last 7,000 years of physical time, back to 7,000 years from 6,000 years from our time, that's when God said, "Let there be light." Again, the creation started. Everything has started from God. But especially so on the sixth day when God says, created Adam, brother, and Adam was able to see light and time began. So our 7,000 years correctly put for physical world, for our human civilization to expand, would be about the time when God first created Adam in his own image and likeness. That time can be traced to the biblical time, where it is a length of 360 days. Precisely. It's equal to like 360 degrees if you like, for every degree for a day. What was mathematically precise? Because then you will see that our planet Earth rotates around the sun for 365.25 days. So when we divide 360 divided by 365.25 days, we get a decimal number, which I call it the conversion factor. It's 0.98562628 to about 8 decimal places. That conversion factor, when we multiply the 4,000 with the 4,000 biblical here, then we get the figure of 3,722.5052 solar years. So solar years is 365.25 days, while the biblical year is 360 days. So in using the conversion factor, we multiply the 4,000 biblical years, then we get this lesson solar year of 3,721 plus 5051 years. This can also be safely put as the beginning of time, which is about that on the timeline called 3,721 BC. Fast track forward, we will come to about 0 biblical years, which is now the extension from the time when the middle of the time when establishes when Jacob was born was about 2,096 biblical years. His conversion and the difference going back in time established the date in which God considered them about 30 years old in his mind. That's actually when the 7,000 years of God's plan for planet Earth began. Then to 0, which is 0 AD. That's when the difference of the years from the birth of Jacob going forward would be established as 28 AD. And that's the time, I believe, Jesus was revealed as the second Adam, was baptized. 3.5 years later, he had to be cut off, means dead on the cross. And then 3.5 years later, to fulfill Daniel chapter 7 and 29 and 27, the 70th week, the mystery of the week, the Messiah shall be cut off. That first fulfilled when Jesus died on the cross. And 3.5 years later from the cross, that's when Stephen was stoned to death. And Jesus stood. And adding it for 2,000 years from 28 AD will establish precisely now. Now it's no confession here. 2,000 years straight will come to 28 AD. 2028 AD. That's when I believe the 6,000 years of God's timeline will end. But remember, there's the 70th week of Daniel. From 2028, we count 7 years. 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35. 35, I believe, is the first 7 years of Daniel's years of prosperity. And I believe the rapture may have taken place around 2035, 80, but people watch and see. And then it is also, when that rapture takes place, we begin the 7 years of Joseph's years of famine. And it is also going to be referred to as the 70th week of Daniel, from 2035 to 2042. And from 2042, counting 2000, precisely 2000 biblical years of 365 days from the 70th week of Daniel, whether the 70th AD when the temple was destroyed, is precisely that 2000 biblical years of 360 days. And then going forward will be precisely, again, 1,000 biblical years from 2042 to 3,000 rather, 28 AD. That's when I believe God will recreate a new heaven and new age, and the exact 7,000 years of God's timeline planet Earth will have. For this brief summary of the timeline, I bring to your attention. And may God bless you and have a happy day today.